Look up into the sky today, and you'll see birds, bats, and perhaps the occasional drone. But if you were to step out of a time machine 300 million years ago, looking up would be a terrifying mistake. Long before the first dinosaur hatched, long before reptiles ever took to the air, the skies were ruled by monsters of a different kind. Imagine hearing the deafening, mechanical hum of wings, only to look up and see an insect the size of an eagle diving straight toward you. These were the Griffinflies, the apex predators of the Carboniferous period and the absolute masters of a world we can barely comprehend today.
Welcome back to Primeval Veil. Time has buried Earth's most fascinating secrets, but today we are pulling back the curtain on a lost world that feels like a science fiction nightmare. If you are captivated by the mysteries of nature and the forgotten monsters that ruled before us, you found your home. Make sure to subscribe, because today we are venturing into the suffocating, giant swamps of the deep past to meet the largest flying insect to ever exist, Meganeura. To understand the monster, we must first understand its world. The Carboniferous period, roughly 300 million years ago, was unlike anything we know today. There were no grassy plains or flowering plants. The Earth was covered in endless, sweltering global rainforests made of giant, towering ferns and scale trees that reached 100 feet into the air. When these massive trees died, they didn't rot normally, eventually forming the coal deposits that power our world today. It was a humid, alien greenhouse. And in this hot, dense jungle, arthropods, insects, spiders, and millipedes were pushed to terrifying extremes.
Enter the Griffinflies. While they looked almost identical to modern dragonflies, they belonged to an extinct order known as Meganeura. The most famous of these is Meganeura, but its later cousin, Meganeuropsis permiana, was the true heavyweight champion. This biological helicopter had a wingspan of up to 2.5 feet, or 75 centimeters, and weighed as much as a crow. Their bodies were thick, armored, and built for high-speed aerial combat. In a world completely devoid of birds or bats, the Griffinfly was the undisputed king of the sky.
Modern dragonflies are already the most successful predators on Earth, with a 95% kill rate. Now, scale that perfection up to the size of a hawk. Meganeura possessed massive compound eyes that gave it nearly 360-degree vision, processing visual information much faster than a human brain. They didn't just casually fly around, they hunted like fighter jets. They would lock onto their prey, giant cockroaches, other large insects, and possibly even small early amphibians. Approaching at terrifying speeds, they used their front legs, covered in sharp spikes, to form a deadly basket, snatching their victims right out of the air and crushing them in their powerful mandibles while still in flight.
But how did insects get so unimaginably huge? Why don't we have hawk-sized bugs today? The secret was in the air itself. Insects don't have lungs. They breathe through a network of tiny tubes in their bodies called trachea, which rely on passive gas exchange. Today, our atmosphere is about 21% oxygen, which strictly limits how big an insect can grow before it literally suffocates. But during the Carboniferous, the massive global forests pumped out so much oxygen that levels peaked at a staggering 35%. The Earth was effectively pumping pure biological steroids into the atmosphere, allowing these creatures to grow to monstrous proportions.
The terror of the Griffinfly wasn't limited to the sky. Like modern dragonflies, they spent the first part of their lives completely underwater as nymphs. But these weren't tiny pond bugs. These were heavily armored aquatic monsters over a foot long. Armed with an extendable lower jaw that could shoot out in a fraction of a second, these giant nymphs sat in ambush at the bottom of the murky swamps. They were apex predators of the shallows, feasting on worms, aquatic insects, and the larval forms of the very first amphibians that were just starting to figure out life on land.
For millions of years, the giant bugs ruled. But the Earth is a restless planet. At the end of the Carboniferous period, the climate drastically shifted. The planet became cooler and much drier. The endless global rainforests fragmented and collapsed in an event known as the Carboniferous rainforest collapse. As the great trees died off, the incredible oxygen levels that sustained these giants began to plummet. Suddenly, their massive bodies became a fatal liability. The air was literally thinning out around them, making it impossible for their giant tracheal systems to pull in enough oxygen to power their massive wings.
Suffocating from the changing atmosphere, the Griffinflies were forced to shrink to survive. But the final nail in the coffin came from a new biological invention: bones. Small, agile vertebrates, the ancestors of pterosaurs and much later birds, began to take to the skies. These new flying reptiles and early birds had lungs, allowing them to fly higher, faster, and longer, regardless of oxygen levels. The once mighty giant insects, sluggish from the dropping oxygen, were no longer the hunters. They had become the hunted.
The empire of the giant insects completely vanished, leaving behind nothing but fragile impressions in coal seams to prove they ever existed. Every time you see a small dragonfly darting over a pond today, you are looking at the miniaturized descendants of a fallen dynasty. Thank you for exploring the deep past with Primeval Veil. If you enjoyed this flight through the Carboniferous, leave a like and tell us in the comments what prehistoric era we should visit next. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, keep looking beyond the veil.